This is live, just a second. So the topic for today is about the neuron. Okay, so we'll be studying about the structure of neuron in today's session, which is basically a unit of nervous system. Okay, so before I start, let me introduce myself. I'm Vani Kari, biology educator at Unacademy. I'm an engineer with bachelor's and master's degree in biotechnology and a B.Ed degree. Also a founder of a startup where I grow microgreens by vertical farming technology. Okay, so just a second. Now this is live. Okay. Alright, so let's have a look at the structure of neuron. Okay, so I'll be covering mainly the structure of neuron and what is the need of nervous system. So we will have a look at it. So moving on to this one. So this is about the coordination that occurs. Okay, so whenever the neuron is sending an impulse from, just a second. Okay. So whenever neuron sends an impulse, so that is across the receptor. So let's say, so receptor, specialized epithelial cell, what is that? So that is going to receive the stimulus and there is a wave of irritability that is set up. Okay. And what will happen? So there is a sensory neuron which is going to carry that impulse that is from the receptor, okay, that is sense organ, to your brain, and brain is going to interpret what has to be done. Okay, so that is a coordination which we can see. So here the process through which two or more organs interact, so you can see interaction of two or more organs and complement the function of one another. So they do complement the function of one another here. Okay, so that we call as coordination. Okay, so in that case you can see brain coordinating with a particular sense organ, right? So there is a coordination which occurs and so here an organized group of specialized cells transmitting signal from different parts of the body. Okay, so they coordinate their action. So this is specifically the sense organ. So what are sense organ? Anybody? So what all are the sense organs that we can find in human body? What are those sense organs? No idea? Okay, so the sense organs are basically the eyes. Okay, so then you can find ear, there is ear, the mouth, mainly the tongue part where it can taste. Okay, so taste is basically a sensation of taste that you have because of the taste buds that are there. Okay, so then there is skin and also there is nose. Okay, so these are the sense organs which will keep you informed with the surrounding. Okay, so these highly specialized cells are the neurons which are going to carry that impulse across the different organ and they coordinate with the brain or the spinal cord there. Just a second. So it is taking time to load. Alright, so the need of nervous system when we mention, so the nervous system in our body, so this performs the following major function. So this is keeping us informed about the outside. Okay, so we all know what is happening in our surrounding. So how does that happen? So it is through the nervous system which is working for us continuously. So that is through the sense organs. So we have these 5 sense organs where we can have a sensation of different things, and that's the reason. So what is happening in and around us is basically informed to us, so that is by the nervous system. So enables us to remember, to think and to reason out. So these are the another functions that we can mention. So you can remember things, so you can also think about, like you are willing to do a particular function, so you are thinking about it and you are able to reason out whatever you are doing, okay, or what exactly happening. So there is a particular situation, so you are able to reason out, so you are giving a reason like why exactly that is happening. So one second. I have this cough since long time now. So this is basically the sensory neurons will enable us to remember, to think and to reason out. Okay, so controls and harmonizes all voluntary muscular activities. So there are voluntary functions. So what exactly is voluntary function? So let's say I want to pick this pen, so then I want to move this table. Okay, so these are like, a thought comes to my mind, and to carry out that action, so there are muscles which I can move, where I can contract them and relax them. So there is a contraction, there is a relaxation. So there is a contraction with respect to muscle, relaxation. So that is, it is with our will, whatever changes that we can move, we can make. So those are with respect to muscular activities, and that are called as voluntary activities. So controlling and harmonizing all the voluntary muscular activities also brought out by the neuron itself. So running or even holding this book in your hand while you are reading it. So all these cases are basically the function of neurons. So neuron has to do, neuron has to, your brain has to send a signal to your motor neuron, and the motor neuron is the one which is bringing about the changes with respect to your muscles. Right, so just like that, out of nowhere it is not going to happen. It is through the nervous system. So regulating the involuntary activities such as breathing. So you know that the breathing or the heart beating, okay, so they are not anyway under our control. So they are not at all under our control. So we do not control them, right? So but one without our knowledge, so this keep happening. So these always keep happening, that there is a continuous heartbeat that you can find. Okay, so there is there is breathing cycle, what we mentioned. So there is a contraction, so there is a relaxation. So all these involuntary activities, even without we being aware about that, so there are changes which are occurring. Okay, and in that case it is the involuntary activities occurring by what? It is by certain control centers associated with the neuron, which will bring about these changes in your body. Okay. So let's have a look at the structure of a neuron. So this is about the neuron. So let me just draw it here and explain it. Just a second. I don't know why exactly I'm unable to detect this pen tab to draw. So I anyway thought of drawing and explaining, but it is not detecting. Okay, anyway, we'll just see here itself. So this is with respect to structure of a neuron. Okay, so neuron has three major parts. So you can mainly find three major parts. One is the axon, so then you can find a dendrite, and there is a cell body. Okay, so these are the three main parts associated with the neuron. So axon, when we mentioned, so it is a long fiber, okay, which will extend from the cell body, whose distant end is branch. So this distant end of this axon, which is this, so that is, there you can see branching. So it is a long process, okay, from the cell body. Whereas the other ones, when we mention, so dendrites, so short fibers that branch repeatedly and project out of the cell body, so those are the dendrites. So you can see here this particular part, it is the dendrite. Okay, just a second. So there is some issue going on with the pen tab, since I'm unable to write here, so I'm just checking it. So short fibers that branch repeatedly and project out of the cell body. So those are called as dendrite. So cell body when we mention, so these contain cytoplasm. Okay. And other than that, certain associated cell organelles will also be there. So you can find a nasal granule. Okay. So this nasal granule in the cell body, so that is specifically in the cytoplasm of the cell body, it is a breakdown product of what? It is a breakdown product of the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so you can find different cell organelles. Any idea which cell organelle is not there in case of this particular animal cell? So that is a neuron. So any idea about that? No? Okay, so certain cytoplasm contains cytoplasm, so you can also find typical cell organelles and certain granular bodies, so those we call as nasal granules. So now I think this is detected fine. No, not that. Okay, maybe it takes time. So then there are granules, so those are nasal granules. So this is the one which is given in your Selena textbook. So you can see there is a dendron. Okay, so this is labeled as a dendron. So let me just take this point. Okay, so now what you see here, so this is what, this is dendron. Okay, then you can see there is a dendrite which is present here. So you can find nasal granule over here. So this is what, this is nasal granule. Then you can see there is a nucleus over here. So this one is the nucleus, and suspended in this you can find there is a cytoplasm, and along with that nasal granule is the breakdown product of the endoplasmic reticulum. So which can also be called, so here the pericarion, which can also be called as a cyton. The meaning is that the pericarion, carrion is what? Nucleus. So peri is what? Surrounding. So surrounding the nucleus, the area which is this, so that can be called as the cyton or the pericarion. So these are all short processes what you see here. Okay, so these are what? These are the short processes that you are seeing, but this one is a long process which runs from the cell body, and that we call as the axon, and this axon is branching forming the axon ending. Okay, so this axon ending when we mention, so this has got, so now this is the axon here, so this has got the bulb like structure where the neurotransmitter will be stored. So let's have a look at the one which is mentioned in your book. So this is with respect to Selena. Okay, so three main parts of the neuron. So these are the cell body. So then you can find dendrites. Okay, just a second. Okay, so three main parts of a neuron are the cell body. So then you can find dendrite there. So I think the positioning is fine. Yeah. Okay, now it is fine. Then dendrites and axon you can find. So the cell body, the pericarion or cyton. So peri is surrounding, carrion is nucleus. So it contains a well-defined nucleus. So you can find there is a well-defined nucleus which is surrounded by granular cytoplasm. So it has the cell organelle like other cells. So there is only centrosome is not there because these nerve cells do not have the capacity to divide. The neurons, once they are formed in the embryonic state, so that's the final number that one would have. So there is no cell division occurring with respect to neuron. Okay, so they have lost the ability to divide, and that's the reason the centrosome is not there. So dendrites, which can also be considered dendron, that is tree or a branch. So these are branch cytoplasmic projections of the cell body. So they conduct nerve impulse to the cyton. So they'll bring the nerve impulses from the surrounding to the cell body or the cyton. So now axon when we mention, so this one is a long process, okay, which runs from the cell body. So you can see this is a long process here. right? So long process running from the cell body is the axon. So this is going to vary in size, so that is from few millimeters to even more than 1 meter in length. So in certain cases it can its length can vary. So in few people it is just about millimeters, okay, and it's not few people, it is basically few places, okay, that is the location in the body. So if it has to run from your head to your leg, so it is lengthier. So if it has to just run to your nearby organ, so let's say from your spinal cord to the stomach or to the intestine, okay, so comparatively it will be less. So the size variation is gonna vary, that is from few millimeters to even more than 1 meter in length. All right. So it is all in our body only. So in different people with respect to their structural arrangement. Just a second. Okay, I'm having cold, bad cold. Okay. So now in this case, in most neurons, the axon is surrounded by white insulating sheath, so that we call as a myelin or the medullary sheath, which is covered by an outermost thin sheet, so that we call as a neurolemma. So the myelin sheet shows gaps throughout the length, so which are called as the nodes of Ranvier. Okay, so wherever this myelin sheet is not there, the neurolemma is covering the axon. Okay, and that myelin sheath absent area, what is this? So that we call as the node of Ranvier, which is named after the scientist Ranvier. So he discovered these nodes for the very first time, and that's the reason nodes are mentioned here. So some axons may have side branches, so that we call as collaterals. Okay, so the end portion of the axon have swollen ends like, so you can find a bulb-like structure which stores the chemical called as a neurotransmitter. So you can find a chemical, so that is called as a neurotransmitter. This, so any idea about what exactly is the neurotransmitter that you can find? Okay. So in this case, the myelin sheet shows gaps throughout the length, which are called as a node of Ranvier. So some axons may have side branches, so that is called as a collateral. Now the neurotransmitter can be acetylcholine. Okay, so those are going to bring about, so it is going to diffuse out this acetylcholine which is there, so it will diffuse out. Okay, and the impulse is set in the next neuro, or we can say next neuron itself. Okay, so axon terminals are closely placed near the dendrites of another one or more neurons, but are not connected. Okay, so such gaps in between are called as the synaptic cleft. So if I have to draw this, no, okay, anyway, the pen tab is not working, so that's the reason I'm unable to write anything, and this cough also. 1 second. I don't know why exactly this is not writing. Okay, so now here the synapse which is mentioned, which can also be pronounced as a synapse. Okay, so synapse is a point of contact between the terminal branches. So there's one neuron, and for that particular neuron you can find a terminal branch. Okay, so this terminal branches of the axon of a neuron with the dendrites of another neuron separated by a fine gap. So now you can see in this, just a second. Okay, so even though it may seem attached here, okay, so there's no attachment. Okay, both are separated. So this neuron and this neuron, so they are separated by a tiny gap. So that gap is called as the synaptic cleft. just a second. Okay, so now here the nerve impulse, so this is going to jump into the next neuron. Okay, so this one is a chemical process. Just a second. This acetylcholine is released from where to where? The acetylcholine release you can see. So that is across the axon terminal, the bulbs which are there. So they are storing this acetylcholine. Okay, so in that bulb. So once the diffusion of this acetylcholine is done across, so you can see there is a release of the acetylcholine which will be received by the dendrites of another neuron. Let me just check this, just a second. Okay, so I'm audible, right? Okay, so now the chemical is soon broken down by an enzyme to make the synapse ready for the next one. So there you can find different types of neurons. So you can find there is a sensory neuron which will convey the impulse from the receptor to the main nervous system, so that is brain or the spinal cord. Okay, so then you can find there is a motor neuron. So if you have studied the pathway of the nervous system, so it is always the stimulus which is, it can be external or internal. So we'll take an example of external stimulus. So that is hot object is there. Okay, so you touch that hot object. Okay, so here what you are touching and that sensation of hot you are getting, so that is because here a specialized epithelial cell is there, so that we call as the receptor. Okay, so receptor is going to experience that stimulus, and when that happens, so this particular receptor is connected to what? It is having a connection with respect to sensory neuron. So this sensory neuron is going to convey the impulse, okay, that is from receptor, that is sense organ, to the main nervous system. So that can be brain or can be spinal cord here. Okay, so then you can find there is a motor neuron. So when we mention about the motor neuron, so these will carry the impulse from main nervous system, that is to an effector. So which is that main nervous system? So now what exactly is the condition is there? So now as soon as you touch a hot object, so this receptor is going to receive a signal that you have touched the hot object. Okay, so now through the sensory neuron, basically the signal will be taken to the brain. So in brain there is one neuron called as a association neuron. Okay, so what exactly this association neuron does, so these are basically you can find in the brain, also in the spinal cord, so which interconnect the sensory and motor neuron. So this is basically associating this neuron and this neuron. Okay, so this particular association neuron you can find in the brain, which is going to connect a sensory neuron with the motor neuron. So now what is going to happen? So this motor neuron, where from the brain a particular message might have come. Okay, so that message is received by the motor neuron and it will be reaching the effector. So who is effector now? The effector is the muscles of the hand. So these muscles of the hand, so we are going to withdraw our hand, that is because we are touching the hot object, so we can burn. So in order to avoid that, so basically we withdraw our hand. So that is the effector is the muscle here. So in certain cases, whenever there is a food in your stomach, okay, so that stomach food in the stomach is detected by the neuron ending again. So in order for the digestion to occur, so the gastric juice is being produced by the stomach, so it can also act on the gland. Okay, so the motor neuron is going to send an impulse to the effector always, so it can be muscle or it can be gland there. Clear? Any doubt in this part? So sensory neuron conveys impulse from a receptor to the main nervous system. So is this true or false? sensory neuron. So they are asking about sensory neuron. So does sensory neuron convey the impulse from receptor to the main nervous system? Yes. So under main nervous system, so you'll see there is a brain as well as spinal cord. So this sensory neuron is going to convey the impulse from receptor to the main nervous system. So it is true. Okay. So moving on to next one. So bundle of nerve fibers of separate neuron enclosed in a tubular sheet. So what do we call it? So is it neuron? Hi Ashwini. Yes, it is true. So for this one, is it neuron, axon, nerve or a dendron? So you can find a bundle of nerve fiber. So nerve fiber is what? It is nothing but axon. So you can find bundle of axons of separate neuron enclosed in a tubular sheet. So what is the answer? So it is the nerve. Yes. So basic structural and functional unit of brain is neuron, nerve, nephron, spinal cord. So there are a lot of students who get confused between nephron and a neuron. Okay. So don't get confused. So nephron is a structural and functional unit of a kidney. But the neuron, when we mention, so it is basically a unit of a nervous system. So here the basic structural and functional unit of brain when we mention, so it is the neuron. Yes, that's right. Okay. So the insulating sheet covering the axon, so that is called as plasmalemma, neurolemma, dendrite and nucleus. So what is that insulating sheet covering the axon? Any idea about this? Is it plasmalemma, neurolemma, dendrite, nucleus? What exactly is that? Okay, so it is anyway neurolemma. Okay, so there is a myelin sheath. Okay, so myelin sheath also acts as the insulating one and the neurolemma. So neurolemma also acts as the insulating sheet which is covering the myelin sheath there. Okay. Alright, so we are done with today's session. So any doubts you have, so you can ask your doubts on my Telegram. So you can just search on Telegram, you can search Vani Kari ICSE class 9 and 10 biology. So you can find my Telegram group there. Okay, so you can join in any doubts you have. So you can ask me your doubts related to bio, or if you need this particular PDF, so just ping me there. I'll be sending this PDF over there. Alright, so see you all in the next session, but before that do subscribe to our channel. So that is a new channel, Unacademy's. This is ICSE and ISC Masters, and also you can click on this bell icon to get notified about the session, like and share the video. And if you want this particular PDF, so you can download it from my Telegram, and other than that you can also download the Unacademy Learners app and start attending the classes there. Okay, so there also will be conducting the session, so all you have to do is download the Unacademy Learners app. Alright, see you all in the next session then. Bye bye everyone.